I want to continue to track the World Health Organization and their effort to usurp authority and power from sovereign nations. Now, this coming December 1st, less than 2 months away, is the deadline for leaders of the 194 member nations to reject the amendments to the international health regulations that were adopted or advanced by the 75th World Health Assembly in May of 2022. Now, these new regulations would establish a framework for unelected bureaucrats at the WHO, the World Health Organization, to assume authority of member nations under a growing list of circumstances. Now, do we really want to give the World Health Organization authority over the United States? All right, I'm gonna give you this petition number right now so that you can get this and sign it before I introduce my next guest. Text WHO, WHO, to 67742, 67742 WHO, and you can sign this petition to get the United States out of this. I'm telling you, this is dangerous. Joining me now to discuss this, Jim Roguski. He is a member of the Law and Activism Committee at the World Council for Health. Jim, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to see you.
News and bad news. And it's different than we talked about last time because it just happened this morning. So, in many effects, this is breaking news. The working group for the amendments to the international health regulations is meeting this week. It's one of the reasons why we scheduled, to have a talk today. And typically what they do is they come together on Monday morning, they talk for, an hour or so, and then they disappear behind, no live stream, no cameras, nothing. And so they actually dropped quite a bombshell this morning. They admitted that they do not think that they are going to meet the deadline of the middle of January, which is when they were obligated to submit a package of amendments to the WHO 4 months in advance of the assembly that meets in May. And so that's the good news. They don't believe they're going to meet their own deadline. But then they went on to concoct a story, and I really honestly feel that they're trying to bend the rules to the point of breaking them. They're going through a hodgepodge, a gobbledygook of legalese to try to justify their failure. And so I've published an article. It's such breaking news. We haven't even had a chance to talk about it. There's all the information is documented because they did record this section of the meeting. Normally, these meetings are exceedingly boring, but boy, did I get a wake-up call this morning with essentially good news that requires us to speak up and demand that they accept their failure. If they believe they're not going to meet the deadlines, we cannot allow them to attempt to fudge or change or bend the rules to the point where they get away with doing something that the rules say they're not allowed to do.
Well, that doesn't seem to have stopped them before. They seem to push the boundaries of the rules of the WHO and of the World Health of the UN in particular. I want to step back for just a moment because there's multiple initiatives that are underway I think this is by design confusing so that they can just do all this under this cloud of confusion. All right, very quickly, just kind of lay out the various tracks that are moving forward that would give the WHO more power as it pertains to pandemics.
Well, the two main tracks are amendments to the existing international health regulations. And that is exactly what I was just talking about.
Right.
It looks like that freight train just is about to get derailed by their own words. The other track that many people talk about, wrongly calling it the pandemic treaty, because what it really is a convention, which is, again, also set to be considered in May of 2024. That is also, going off the rails because a couple of weeks ago, they announced that they were scrapping their fourth version of the document. They've had 4 so far. And the fifth one is scheduled to be circulated quietly in mid-October and then may be made public at the end of October. But essentially, they're arguing amongst themselves, and they said, hey, let's go back to the drawing board and start all over again from scratch. There are two smaller tracks. One of them was the United Nations document that we talked about before,
Right.
or their declaration, that 11 nations said no. And so that put a wrench in their works. And the fourth track is the one that is maybe the highest priority in the sense of a deadline. They did adopt amendments last year, and I've put a call out, an open letter to every world leader. Look at what is in those amendments. They all have the authority under Article 61 of the IHR to just write a letter to the WHO and say, no, we reject those amendments for our nation. Now, none of this is all going to just happen by itself. But, if you know what it is you want and you pray to God for what it is you want and you do the work that you're directed to do,
Right.
Miracles happen. And so I'm very, very optimistic with this news this morning.
Let me play a clip from Friday of the Director General of WHO, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, and I want you to interpret for me what he's talking about. Play clip 6.
World leaders gathered for a record 3 high-level meetings dedicated to health issues. At the first meeting on pandemic prevention, preparedness and response, they committed to conclude negotiations on the pandemic accord and amendments to the international health regulations by May next year.
Is he being completely honest?
In what he said, yes, but I'll add the things that they don't say, right? On Sunday, September 17th, just before his record 3 high-level meetings, which were not official meetings of the General Assembly, those 11 nations said, we don't appreciate you pretending that this is fully official. And so they put a wrench in the gears in regards to that statement. And as I just reported, what they said today at the working group for the amendments to the international health regulations, while he may say and nations leaders may say that they're behind these negotiations are not about to reach their goal. They're failing. So it's a lot of propaganda that, when you dig in and you actually get the facts, they can speak a partial truth. And that's one of the ways that they, successfully attempt to lie. They don't tell you the whole truth.
So, Jim, before we talk about how we can help push these things off the track, help them derail completely, I want to go a little bit further in the type of power that this would grant to the WHO, because this, as I understand it, is unprecedented in the amount of power and authority that would reside in the WHO. Am I correct in that?
If you look to the documents that were submitted more than a year ago, the amendments to the IHR were submitted on September 30th, 2022. Now, if you look to that version, some of the things are absolutely absurd. The biggest concern that I have is the Global Digital Health Certification Network, where they want to track and trace everybody with, it's essentially a vaccine passport.
Right.
There are many more wildly ridiculous and egregious things like turning recommendations into obligations so that the Director General would effectively be the Dictator General. And the Indian delegation proposed crossing out language in the existing regulations, which currently say that the regulations should be implemented with full respect for the dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms of people. And astonishingly, they suggested crossing that out. I suspect, but I don't know, that those things are crossed out and they're not currently in the documents being negotiated. But the big issue is we don't know what those current documents are because they're keeping them totally secret. And that is really all anybody needs to know. Things that are done in secret are generally not, considered to be good. What is it that they're trying to hide?
Right. And Jim, they've at least showed their hand in part that this is a power grab. And so this is dangerous. It could usurp the authority of individual states, including the United States. So very quickly, before we run out of time here, give us some action steps. What do people need to be doing to make sure this train stops?
Well, as always, just share this video. You're watching this. This is breaking news. 99.99999% of people on the planet have no idea that this happened this morning. So step number one is to recognize that awareness is the start of everything. If you're not aware of something, you're not going to do anything about it. If you go to stoptheamendments.com, you can, see all of the detailed information about what they're trying to do. But it really starts with spreading the word. All of us, have the ability to be the media. We have this little presentation that you can see, but if you keep it a secret, you're being a censor.
Right.
So spread this far and wide. Spread the good news.
Jim Roguski, we're out of time, but always love talking with you, and we're going to continue to track this. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.